Hey there, everybody. I'm back to share more about my photos and my life. Now, this time I'm going to talk about living in Port Huron, where I think this is where some of my best memories are had, and maybe even one of the best houses we've lived in. Now, before we moved to that house in Port Huron, we were living at my grandma Weaver's house out in Yale, Michigan, which would have been about an hour's drive west of there, and that was a more rural area where my mother grew up at. And so then, when my parents were able to, we moved into Port Huron. That's where my father grew up. And so there we had a 2-story, 3-bedroom house with a basement. Now, some of my pictures living at that house in Port Huron. I did eventually get my own bicycle. That's where I learned to ride a bike. So I only had the training wheels for a short time and before those came off, and then I was able to ride around the block all by myself. And living in Port Huron is also where I've realized that I should become a musician. So my mother was working at a bar and became friends with some of the musicians that played there when they found out she could sing. Next thing you know, she was singing in a band, so I was going to practice with my mom and eventually got to see her play live here. So that is September 7th, 1981. They're at the Blue Water Bridge. I was like 6 years old, and I was just really proud to see my mom on stage singing in a band. Well, she liked more I guess conventional music, so she was singing like, they were just doing covers, so it was more like rock music, maybe like some of the oldies like the Everly Brothers, stuff like Linda Ronstadt, and she always liked rockabilly, so I can't remember exactly what would have been on her playlist, but I was awfully proud seeing my mom on stage. Like, that's my mom, and so that's why I made the paper. And then there's my dad, and he had his own little music scene going at the house in Port Huron, and so those are some of the pictures of, so I only have a few pictures, but I'm going to talk a lot about this because I really think we had such a good time living there. So with my dad, what happened was there's this guy named Kelly Cowan coming by the house on a regular basis, because that's the direction he was walking. I don't have any pictures of him, but these are a couple of the guys who used to come over, and so from what I understand, my mom was sitting outside having a cigarette, and she saw Kelly coming by, and she just really liked his purple shoes, and she commented on them, and then Kelly commented that he really always liked my dad's music, and so he started coming over, and then a bunch of guys started coming over, and then we had band practice in the basement, and so this is Kelly's keyboard, and so we had the keyboard, and so that's just like an electric organ, and drums, and then I'd see them playing bass and guitar, so I think they realized I was interested in music. That's why they took that picture. So I remember they actually put some sunglasses on me and had me stand there like this and said, "We're gonna make you a rock star, Jody." And I started crying and I said, "I don't want to be a rock star." So I think if you could see my face, I think I was really upset. So I definitely want to be a musician, but I don't want to be a rock star. Like, somehow that word rubbed me the wrong way. And so it's funny because later on that's going to add up that somehow I didn't like the idea of being a rock star. Now, at that age, I started to figure out that not only that I want to be a musician, but that I was already kind of figuring out what kind of music I liked. Anyway, like the music my dad was playing, it was more like underground music, industrial music at the time, and so here's a fun picture of us. We went to a photo booth, and so, to this day, I still have a problem with sticking my finger in my mouth, and I can imagine he was asking me to please take the finger out of my mouth. He finally got it out. Boom. And then, another story I have in my videos is called The Hang-On. So, like, one of the spookiest things I've ever seen was a hang-on. And that's when Mimi Fitzgerald was my babysitter, and she came up to try to tell me there was no such thing as hang-ons. Well, there she is hugging Sasquatch. He's a Bouvier. So we had Sasquatch and Montag, and I think he was called a Schnoodle. He was a gray dog, kind of had the beard and mustache. So there's Mimi. I always missed her. Like, we stayed in touch with her a little bit after we left. But yeah, so she was always babysitting for my parents, and And she was just somebody that liked our music. So, my dad had um, really fun parties. We had a lot of people come over, jamming in the basement. They were smoking pot, tripping on LSD. And so who knows? One time I hit my head. I was trying to like, I was kind of short. So I was like, the counter has like this, I don't know, like this empty spot. And then it still has the corner there. And then the trash was under this. I don't know. I guess I reached in there to throw something away. Like I felt like I had to reach all the way in there. And then when I stood up, I hit my head right on that goddamn corner, and it hurt really bad. And I think I was standing there crying about it. And my dad came in the kitchen and he looked me in the eyes and said, "Oh my God, I got to get you to the hospital." And I thought it was because I hit my head. Well, later on, he told me what happened was they lost some LSD and they were afraid that I've eaten it. I think they found it later, but maybe I was catching a contact high and had dilated pupils because I'm hanging out with those guys all the time. So that's what I was saying earlier. Like my parents joke about me being found under a cow pie. Well, these people, they like to trip, so I'm not complaining. I'm just saying, like that's the kind of household we have. Those are the kind of parties they were having, and so who knows, hanging out with those guys, listening to music together, I really felt like that was my music because, I was aware of other music that when we were at my house, there was, my dad's music was the only place I'd ever hear my dad's music because when we go out into public, I realized there's a difference between what we listen to at home and in public. There's like, I'd hear stuff like Blondie on the radio. I kind of like Blondie a little bit, that one song. They got kind of a cool techno sound back in the 70s, like you'd hear it in Donna Summer and stuff. I love that synthesizer sound. And then what would play at the bar, what's more acceptable in public, you see. So, but I've always known that I liked my dad's music a little more. And so I'm going to do a separate video talking about my favorite music. But as far as Port Huron goes, absolutely, one of the best parts of my childhood. We had a really good Christmas last time I remember. I remember I had that tunnel and everything. My dad made us an ice pond outside. So that was where I had my fifth and sixth birthday. And I started kindergarten when I was 6 years old, and then we moved to the Florida Keys. Anyways, yeah, so Port Huron, like me and my sister had her own bedroom. Now, my sister hasn't always been my friend. I remember one time some relatives came over and they hadn't seen me since I was in my diapers, and they were commenting on how pretty I turned out to be and how beautiful my long blonde hair was. And so my sister invited me upstairs for a haircut. So she chopped off most of my hair and then she took a nice big pee on my floor because it made her upset being complimented. So I don't know what to think of that, but those are some of the things I remember about Port Huron. Like learning to ride my bike, ice skating in the backyard, concert in the backyard. We had really good Christmases and dinners there. But I'll never understand that. And then I was scared of the hang-on, so I had to go sleep in her room for a while. But she got sick of me because I'd keep her up and talk to her, so I could tell I was kind of a pest. I thought, well, I am kind of a pest. I think I've always been a bother. So, but yeah, but I love my sister. It's just one of those funny memories of Port Huron. So that kind of like kind of a foreshadowing to maybe other times. When I talk about things in Port Huron, um, I really felt like, I don't know. I think at first we were excited about moving to Florida, but in the long run, I really missed Port Huron quite a bit. Anyways, I'm gonna take a break here and share a little bit more about Port Huron in my next video. You guys, I hope you're enjoying my stories. I'll talk to you soon.